I was doing everything the books told me to do, planning elaborate activities, hovering at the playground, explaining every single rule, and I was exhausted. Then I started stopping things, and parenting got much easier, like significantly easier. So here are 5 things I quit doing that changed everything. Here's what no one tells you about modern parenting. We've been conditioned to believe that good parenting means doing more activities, more explanations, more involvement, more Pinterest crafts, more organic snacks made from scratch. But all that more was making me anxious, overwhelmed, and honestly, not present with my kids because I was so busy doing. So I started an experiment. What if I did less? What if I stopped some things instead of adding more? It turns out subtraction is way more powerful than addition. And my kids didn't suffer, they actually thrived. The wake up call happened on a Saturday morning. I had planned this whole day. Sensory bin activity at 9, nature walk at 10:30, homemade pizza making at lunch, outdoor scavenger hunt by 3, and by 10 a.m., my kids were fighting. I was snapping at them, and no one was having fun. My son looked at me and said, "Dad, can we just play?" And it hit me. I was so busy trying to be the Pinterest perfect dad that I forgot to just be with my sons. That's when I started paying attention to what was actually making parenting harder, not easier. And I started cutting those things out one by one. Number 1, I stopped planning daily activities. Okay? I used to spend 30 minutes every night planning the next day's activities. Pinterest sensory bins, educational crafts, themed learning time. You know what happened when that stopped? My kids started playing more creatively. They built forts out of the couch cushions. They created entire worlds with their toys. They actually used their imagination instead of waiting for me to entertain them. Now, here's what I learned. Boredom is actually good for kids. It's where creativity comes from. What I do now, I have a rotation of basic toys and art supplies available to them. That's it. No planned activities unless it's something I genuinely want to do with them. The pressure is gone, and my kids are more engaged in their play than ever before. If you're drowning in activity planning, stop. Your kids don't need a cruise director. They need space to be kids. Number 2, I stopped hovering at the playground. This was a tough one for me. I used to follow my kids around the playground like a shadow. Up the ladder, down the slide, be careful, watch out, not too high. I thought I was being a good parent. I was actually teaching them that they couldn't trust themselves. One day I saw another dad just sitting on a bench, having a cup of coffee, and his kids were playing. And I thought, why can't I do that? What I do now is, unless they're doing something dangerous, I sit down. I watch from a distance. I let them take small risks. And you know what happened? They become more confident. They problem solved how to get down from high places on their own. They learned their own limits. Plus, I actually got to finish a conversation with another adult for once at the playground. Now, your kids don't need a helicopter. They need a home base they can check back in with and go back out and play some more. Number 3, I stopped explaining and justifying every single decision I was making. This one was huge. I used to explain everything. You can't have that candy before dinner because sugar will spike your blood sugar and you won't eat your vegetables, which have important nutrients. You need the nutrients to build strong bones and strong skin. No. Meanwhile, my kid, he's not listening to my nutrition lecture. He doesn't care. He just wanted the candy. What I do now? The answer is no. Period. Sometimes a brief reason. No candy before dinner. You can have some after dinner. But I stopped the dissertations. And here's why this works. Kids don't actually want the explanation. They want to negotiate. The longer you talk, the more openings they have to argue. When I shortened my responses, the pushback actually decreased. They learned that no means, oddly enough, no. and we move on faster. You don't owe your 4-year-old a Supreme Court justification for every boundary, because I'm the parent and I said so is actually a complete sentence. Number 4, I stopped intervening in every sibling conflict. Okay? Sometimes my kids argue, and I would rush in to mediate. Use your words. Let's find a solution together. How do you think your brother feels? I was basically their conflict resolution manager, which meant they never learned to resolve conflicts themselves. What I do now, unless someone's getting hurt or it's escalating to physical aggression, I stay out of it. I might say from the other room, hey, sounds like you two have a problem. I can trust you to work it out. And here's the wild part. They usually do. Now, sometimes they compromise, right? Sometimes one kid walks away. Sometimes they come up with a creative solution that I never would have thought of. But when I stopped being the referee, they learned negotiation, compromise, and how to advocate for themselves. Those are important lessons for kids. These are life skills. And I was robbing them of that by fixing everything for them. Now, if it gets physical, obviously, if somebody's, being bullied, I'm going to step in. But 90% of the sibling squabbles that they have, well, they can handle it themselves. And I'm showing them that I trust them. Number 5, I stopped trying to make them eat everything at the dinner table. Now, this one saved my sanity. I used to battle every single meal. Just try one bite. You loved this the last time you had it. You can't leave the table until you eat your vegetables. Meanwhile, it's a war zone. And guess what? They still didn't eat. What I do now, I make the meal, I put it on the table. They eat it or they don't. I always include at least one thing I know they're going to eat, even if it's just a piece of bread. So I know they won't starve. But I stopped begging, bribing, and forcing. The rule, this is what's for dinner. You don't have to eat it, but there's nothing else until breakfast. The first few nights, my picky eater ate almost nothing. He did have the bread. I was worried, but I held the boundary. And within a week, he started trying new foods because I wasn't pressuring him. The power struggle disappeared. Turns out kids are really good at regulating their own hunger when we stop making food a battleground. Talk to your pediatrician if you have real concerns, but for most kids, they will not starve themselves. Let go of the food battles, okay? So, what's the thread connecting all 5 of these things? Well, I stopped doing things that were about my anxiety, not their actual needs. Planning activities, well, that equals my fear that they'd be bored or behind developmentally. Hovering over them, that was my fear that they'd get hurt. Over-explaining, that was my fear that they'd think I was being unfair. Mediating fights, that was my fear that they wouldn't get along. And food battles, that was my fear that they weren't getting proper nutrition. All I was doing was fixing my anxiety in disguise. And when I stopped and gave them some space, creativity, confidence, problem-solving skills, self-regulation, independence, the things I was doing to help them, I was actually getting in their way. Parenting got easier when I realized my job isn't to prevent all struggle. It's to be present while they learn to navigate it. Now, let's do a quick recap. This is what I stopped doing. I stopped planning daily activities, and that let their boredom spark creativity. I stopped hovering at the playground, and that built their confidence and my sanity. I stopped explaining every decision, that shortened responses, reduced arguing. I intervened less in sibling arguments, and they learned conflict resolution. And I stopped the food battles, and mealtimes became peaceful and enjoyable. The common theme, I stopped doing those things that made me feel productive, but actually made parenting harder. Parenting isn't about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing less. Less can be better. Okay, I need to know what's one thing you could stop doing that might actually make parenting easier for you. Drop it in the comments. Maybe it's something from this list, or maybe it's something totally different, like folding their laundry perfectly, keeping the house spotless, responding to every, mom, or dad. Let's build a list together of things we can let go of. Remember, you don't have to do it all to be a good parent. Sometimes the best thing you can do is to stop. You've got this. Now, go do less, my friend. And if you like this information, subscribe to our channel, share this with a parent, teacher, or caregiver. We're working hard to help build strong, resilient kids. I'll see you next time.